because when I done my research, there was one question that I was constantly thinking about. What was your first love? Was it then acting or was it music? Because now I think when I read the interviews, you say, well, music is the thing for me, and acting is more like a job.
Well, acting for me has been a job for almost ever. I mean, I had wanted to be an actor when I was a very little kid, 6, 7 years old. By the time I was 15, I wanted to make films, and frankly, if I knew how to make a living making the kind of movies I guess I'm more inclined to make, maybe that's probably how I would be making my living. But I don't have the. It's hard for me to. I don't think my taste is necessarily something, for better or for worse. I'm not saying I have. I'm far from a perfect filmmaker, but the thing that gives me pleasure about filmmaking is not necessarily the thing that will give me will give others, as much pleasure. And so, acting is what I knew how to do in order to make a living. And music, I always was an incredibly huge part of my life. But I was not by any means a musician. I played drums for years as a kid, but and I would try and sing and make recordings with friends who were in bands or had little studios when I was, maybe like 19, 20, whatever. But it wasn't really until I was 23 that I suddenly found myself recording and writing songs. I can't totally account for it, to be honest with you. It kind of just happened.
So you don't know why? It's just. Maybe something that happened, or maybe...
No, I mean, I know it was something that I for instance, I could dream, I would have dreams where I would dream melodies, for instance. But I had no technical facility with which to carry that out. I felt very intimidated by the prospect of learning, and that's just a kind of a block that I've had regarding other things that I've eventually picked up. Editing was one of those things. I used to edit Super 8 film, but when I started to try and learn how to edit on the Avid, or well, now they use Final Cut a lot, but on a computer, when someone tried to show me, I couldn't sort of retain it. But I remember on my first film, Scotch and Milk, the first film I directed, and when my editor got sick, and she just left one day, and I just sat there in front of the computer and I began to edit, because I guess, I don't know, there was no pressure of having someone stand over me. And the same thing kind of happened with guitar and eventually a little bit with piano, keyboards and things. And so I just found myself finally, here and there, very slowly, just kind of working out melodies and sounds, and and again, I have really early 4-tracks that actually kind of in some ways sound very similar to some of the things that I do now. But in other ways, I could only write so much, and now in the last few years, I think I can my songwriting has gotten more, I think, sort of, I don't know, probably more complex, as I've sort of allowed myself to learn rather than just sort of fiddle around and screw around with a tape recorder,
You were saying at the age of 5 or 6 you knew you wanted to act?
6 or 7, yeah.
How come? What happened? What did you see? What did you do?
Freud would say it was because my parents got divorced.
Do you believe in Freud?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's aspects. Well, sure. I absolutely believe in his analysis of situation. Do I believe Freudian psychotherapy is effective? No, because I was in it for 20 years and and I'm no better off for it. I'm only very able to articulate my problems, but not able to solve them. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm sure it had something to do with that. My dad would come over to pick me up from my mother's on weekends, and I would do little skits and shows for him. It's a pretty easy analysis, I think, to make. What's going on there, but I saw plays and things, when I was a kid, and I got real excited watching that, and and I think I was a ham, and and I was a pretty verbal kid, I guess, and so, and I just did plays in school, and as time went on, it just made more and more sense, and by the time I was 14, I started taking acting classes, and